Count 8, this is Delegate Daniel So.
Morning, sir.
Good morning, Chair. We have yourself. I believe Paul Begay was on the line.
I'm
And
here.
those are the
Dr.
only ones.
Juanita.
Okay, and Mr. Wanika's here in the BNF room in person.
And we're still, we need, I think Honorable Slater and Honorable Halona are doing the Nabi work session.
Chair, I'm here. Should I?
Oh, good. Thank you. And Honorable Paul Begay's on the line? Hello, Honorable Vice Chair, did you make it through traffic? Are you in Window Rock?
I'm almost there.
Oh, good. You're past Fort Defiance then. That's where the signal is better.
I'm actually right before Fort Defiance. For some reason, my phone is giving me some places it usually doesn't.
Yes. So it sounds like there's 3 of us right now.
That's correct,
Mose,
Chair.
am I? Yes.
Yes, sir. There's only three of you. Yourself, Vice.
Well, we'll just wait a few more minutes.
Chair, this is Leonard. Honorable Paul Begay online.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mose. Let me call the regular meeting of the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee meeting together. Call it to order. Mr. Mose, roll call.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. Paul Begay Jr.,
Delegate Paul Begay is present.
Honorable Pernell Halona, Honorable Pernell Halona, Honorable Carl Russell Slater.
Present, Delegate.
Thank you. Honorable Charlene So, Honorable Charlene So, Honorable Daniel E. So,
I'm here.
sir. Honorable Edison J. Wanika. Here. Thank you, sir. Chair, we have 4 members constitute a quorum.
Thank you. So we have the quorum. At this time, I'd like to call on Chair Paul Begay to provide invocation for us.
Full Delegate Chair Daniel So, members of the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee. Ado da isnos trangi sto. Tashin ya tati ni sto. Danda idi kasto ado be bikahal. Bada di listi ya. Be ata di tri. Ni katigin. Yang shon lo de yan ho ade kon. Ni kenadin ti di ben bi jannati tkhana da silgin. Ado iya jon ko iya ni hana ot. Doya na national large lahaki iya lekanada di tahtole di ko iya health education ko iya vice chair na Hamza Carl Slater. Our committee members Nick Cornish away Charlene So other she just the honorable delegate Edison Wanika other she delegate Pernell Halona. But ego iya committee members include other iya yet to here got ego iya all traffic need in other iya and hidden Neto Australian Lini or Sani Lini das Bagi beginning other trees now large trees this Israel inch beginning could ego ear and Sagway beginning or because uncle on Lord or this on here ear did beginning keep it in the shield installed cut on the corner or how you Kato can't out on the district area on another gate or simply not the horses. Yet for patient at all, so an unstahadin Kagi, Ahoda Junada il Tra or nada dog. Banan otherwise something that the Pendabi. Pasal insan activation gate activity activation funding. You see, the charge constant on this. So, corner here, which your card needs and what else deals and which your card data actually harvesting that screen all this. It's a now yard all this, so not the deal safer. Although it is yet a consistent start all this. Down with ego, here with energy. هذا كون خاشن دو نكين ليني بسنادا أشيدي صفتو خد إيجو هذا إنها تسدي شخنا دي تيتو يات إيجو هذا تسدي جون كون هنان شدي إندور تاوس خاطو تاسيات إيجو جون إن هذا هو خاطو ليس في تو بتنا هو يا خدات إيجو شخنا هستان دولي كون سوية كون خاصة بالسنشرين قام هي هذا أت سنشرين هذا أقون هو أن هذا أقو يكتون لشين قام بتني كلينجي جيان تودا إيه أت إيه بهتني تجد أنه الأهدا بين كتجلي دولة هذا إيه هذا تهوى إيه يشي هلا دولة 또 나는 수다한테 해기다. 같은 이 토하다 좀 거기다 또 그때 나는 이도를 카드 거기에 이아 또가 오바나 오카다 신기 다시게 이제 나한테 토한 돈 링기에 오슬리도 돈다 할킨다도 아도다다 오바다 하는 외고 돈나네 거야 네 다 하는 건 하네 지금가 느끼야 배트리 네저 파이벤 지나지 지나지 가서 이 초긴 지나 헛로도 리스나바 아디스바 에고 이암시나 킨도레 아도 칠하도 칠야티 아도난 세야티 칠카스야티 콘데 다합스 고도 칠사나 아고 토한다든 하고 다서 토비 하다도 핑서 베치도다 토비 하다도 핑 니리 달리 야티 하예
Chair Daniel So. Vice Chair Carl Slater. Yes, I can hear you. I believe Chair Daniel So's call dropped. Okay, thank you.
Hello? Anybody hear me? Hello?
I can hear you, Mr. Chair. This is Angelita Benelli. Good morning. Mr. Chair, this is Angie Benelli. I'd like to, in the place in announcements, I'd like to indicate that, or at least on the record, indicate that Helen Brown had communicated yesterday that she's out of the office due to an emergency, and she'll be out all week. And also, Patricia Ghani, I received a email response that she is out of the office and she's out of the office this week and she's not going to check her mail, is what she indicated. And I did forward the 2 emails to the Health, Education, Human Services Committee members. Thank you.
Yate Shanantai. This is Dr. Bitsui. Ishni Bashishchin, Setna Jenny Dashache, don't know Bani Dashanale. Ado Yate Shanantai no Shingi. Thank you for this opportunity to meet again. I also have online with Navajo Head Start Director Janelle Begay and the Director of Administrative Services Tama Nez. So thank you and welcome as well to everyone else online.
Oh yes, it's another. She Janelle Begay Inisia. Not often at Fatini, she Bashishchi. Tisha A, Mr. Tay, Cafatini, Dashanella. Also, I am the Delegated Current Director of Educational Services. Yeah.
Yate Pene, She Yaha Tamanez and She, although I am the Director of Administrative Services for Head Start. Yate She, Zatlanta Bahan Shanto Hitlini Bashichin, although she hate that she chedo, Kia Ani Edashanale. Yate.
Yate, this is Alex Kinsella with Navajo Nation Department of Justice.
Good morning. This is Michelle Begay, also with Navajo Nation DOJ.
Mr. Chair and members of the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee. You have your proposed agenda. The Health, Education, and Human Services Committee of the 24th Navajo Nation Council. It's a regular meeting, June 9th, 2021. Presiding the Honorable Daniel Eso, Chairperson, and Honorable Carl R. Slater, Vice Chairperson. Place is via telecommunications, Window Rock, Navajo Nation, Arizona. 1, call meeting to order, roll call, invocation, announcements. 2, recognize guests and visiting officials. 3, review and adopt the agenda. 4, review and adopt the journals. None. 5, receive reports. An executive session may be required during the following reports. A is the audit report regarding Head Start. And it's the Head Start Performance Audit Report of Findings by Moss Adams. B, the follow-up report and update on the requested carryover of the 2018 Navajo Nation Council appropriation. C, a follow-up report on self-governance grant, along with a proposed draft legislation. 6, old business, none. 7, new business. A is travel with the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee leadership meeting. I believe it's a work session on Friday, June 11th, 2021 in Albuquerque, New Mexico, to meet with the Natani Development Corporation in coordination with an invitation from the Resource and Development Committee. 8, close the meeting, announcements and adjournment. And the next meeting is Friday, June 11th, 2021 as a work session. And the following regular meeting of the Health, Education, Human Services Committee is Wednesday, June 16th. Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee. There are none listed on the agenda at the time I had it posted, but since then, Mr. Mose has completed the journal for June 2nd, but that'll be on the next week's agenda. Okay. Okay, the new 5A is a follow-up report and update on the requested carryover from 2018 Navajo Nation Council appropriation. The presenters and Louis Mollett is not the attorney that is following this issue. It is okay. Mr. Chair, in previous Health, Education, Human Services Committee meetings, the this issue about the carryover from the 2018 NNC appropriation was addressed by the committee in the beginning. And then after that, what came after was the audit report. And that's the report that was listed as A. And that was subsequently requested after the committee had initially received a report on the 2018 appropriation. The committee wanted to wait to see what the audit report entailed before they acted on the 2018 NNC appropriation regarding Head Start. But both reports are dealing with Head Start. Mr. Chair, the, what is now 5A, if you choose to move forward on that, would be Alexandra Kinsella of DOJ, Elizabeth Begay, Robert Willie, Dominic Vial, and Dr. Elvira Bitsui, as well as Ms. Patricia Ghani.
Good morning, Honorable. So yes, I am on the call. I am prepared to speak. However, I covered most of what from DOJ's perspective on the UUFB carryover last week. We do have Mr. Rodas on the call today, as well as he and his unit worked on the memorandum regarding the lapse of the UUFB. At the last meeting, you had requested that Head Start work with the Office of the Controller and OMB to provide a more detailed report on how carryover is calculated within the program, as well as a more detailed accounting of how the carryover has been utilized in the past. So that would come from the program and their collaboration with OOC and OMB. So I'm happy to speak to any of the elements with regard to the lapse and the memorandum, as is Mr. Mel Rodas, who's with us today. And then I believe Dr. Bitsui is prepared to speak to some of the more detailed questions around the carryover. So as you would like to proceed, how, please just let us know. Honorable So, this is Alex with DOJ. So usually how it works, okay, thank you. So typically the program will receive, so in this case, the acknowledgement of a new 5-year grant. However, the waiver, the program has to specifically, upon receiving the award for the 5-year grant, and also the budgetary breakdown for the notice of award for the specific grant year, the nation or the program then must proactively seek out a waiver. And typically, again, the in-kind or cash match contribution has to equal % of the award. And this year, the nation, upon receiving the grant award, then requested a 10% waiver. And we did receive that waiver, but that waiver has to be requested each and every year of the grant. It is not an automatic waiver. So if we are granted, for 1 year, it does not persist throughout the remainder of the 5-year grant. So it is a yearly requirement on the part of the program to proactively request a waiver. Does that answer your question, Honorable So? The answer is no. The waiver does not account for all 5 years. It has to be done each individual year.
I'm looking at the, there are several phone numbers that don't have names. But I don't see. No, I don't see anybody recognizable with names by their numbers, but there are a lot of numbers that have just the telephone numbers, but it doesn't identify the person calling in. Yes, Mr. Chair, I did send, I did send it out to the Hess and several offices. And I did send a reply to Mr. Shorty that forwarding him the email that where I distributed the document that he provided.
Answer the question about shortfall fundings for our business sector or not. We have a proposal that will be submitted to the ARP to make up that difference for the GMAR, what's called GMAR, guaranteed minimum annual payments. Those are the fees paid by our businesses to do obligation. Just last year combined, it's about $4 million. See that these businesses behind the cost of obligation to us. Of course, these are new start.
For Mr. Shorty.
Mr. Chair, this is Dominic Bial. On the first question, I'll go ahead and make comment about that, and then Mr. Shorty can add to it. But I know he can speak about the second question. So, regarding the current external fund cash match budget. And as the way Mr. Shorty explained it, an appropriation is made annually in addition to whatever the carryover balance is. So as he mentioned in his report, and he was looking into it this morning, it's surprising to hear that it's so high already, 21 million, if his numbers are right. I'm not sure perhaps that it's current, meaning maybe OOC hasn't made all the charges as yet, but it's surprising that it's so high. But with that, I would say that we've been meeting with the Budget and Finance Committee over the last month or two, and we met with them again yesterday on the entire FY22 budget process, and we're going to get it rolling here real soon. It's going to start soon. So one of the set-asides that we work with will be the cash match fund. As you heard Mr. Shorty explain, and as well as myself, annually, for the last 2 years at least, we've put 3.8 million new money into this particular fund. That adds to the carryover. So as you heard me say, on an annual basis, that runs from 8 to 10 or 11 million. That's available for the 17 grants Mr. Shorty referred to, where there's a cash match requirement. Now, again, because it's based on actual expenditures, that's why a balance is always left. So at this point, we'll continue to do that. So the only thing I can say about it is, as you hear me describe it, even going back a couple of years now to FY18, when the 6.3 million was initially appropriated, it's still not understood very well. And soon, both OOC, OMB, and with help from DOJ, maybe we need to come up with some language, some provisions, either in the BIM would be the better place, or separately, that would better define and describe how this particular fund is supposed to work, because it's not well understood. Mr. Chair, that's my response, but I'll have Mr. Shorty speak to the rest of it. Mr. Shorty.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me? The committee members, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Let me just go back to the 6.3 million. These monies was to supplement Head Start funding. I venture to say FY18, the Navajo Nation received a letter from Office of Head Start indicating that due to data used to determine the amount of allocation to the nation, it showed that I think it was student enrollment was decreasing. As a result, the amount coming to the nation would be reduced by 6.3 million. So based on that, Head Start sought appropriation for that amount. So they were essentially, as far as the amount of funding is concerned, a whole for that year, they were given notice a funding decrease of 6.3 would happen. So that decrease never happened. It didn't happen. It wasn't implemented. But so Head Start was left with the 6.3 as additional funding to the amount that came from the cash match appropriation, they're given a certain object code, 9560, I believe it was. So this 6.3 million, a separate budget was set up. It wasn't set up as a cash match account. So that caused some confusion. So Head Start was using this 6.3 as additional funding above and beyond the federal award. So it was very confusing. It was a daunting task for OOC to determine, okay, of this 6.3 million expended, which one qualifies, which expenses qualify as match that need to be booked as match on the federal side. So due to that confusion, I think not all expenditure of that out of that 6.3 that qualify as match was booked for that grant year, FY 18 and FY 19, I believe it was. So just some additional information on that 6.3 million appropriation. As far as the outlook on the process, if there's any discussion of what improvement should be made, so this cash match fund and accounting for it is, I guess, better defined, it's more streamlined, easy to follow. To me, the pool account that was started, I think it's working well. Any amount identified for a grant that's not expended remains in the pool account for use for cash match need. And then there are times that program apply for grant that require cash match, on which cash match for that wasn't considered during the appropriation. So in that regard, that additional grant that requires match is covered in that sense. So it works well in that way. As far as a clarification, as Dominic indicated, I think what's needed is just guideline and policy rule to better explain how this is supposed to work. There is proposed external grant policy that there's provision in there already, and this policy has been in draft for some time, and we hope that will be approved before the end of the year. So I think the clarification would be made. As far as the nation requesting waiver every year, or maybe for the duration of the multi-year agreement, I spoke, the current agreement is for 5 years. If the nation should include waiver, request for waiver, one thing that we need to all understand is for FY22, the federal share is estimated to be 21 million. The Navajo Nation share, the 20% amount, is 6 million. So that makes it a total budget of 27 million. So more amount to work with, 27 million. But when there's a waiver, then it's only 21 million. So a decision needs to be made. Which is better to work with, the 21 million or the 27 million? So it's not an easy decision. If a waiver is going to be less, say, money saved for the nation not having to come up with the 20% share, but then we work with a smaller budget. So those are some discussion and decision that needs to be made. Is it better to work with a larger budget that includes cash match, or do without cash match and work with a smaller budget? So that a decision that has to be made. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Shorty. Committee members, any questions? Clearly, it's a complex matrix that we will try to have to tread through. Honorable Vice Chair Slater, You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to Mr. Bial and Mr. Shorty. So Mr. Bial answered or got at the point that I was getting at, and Mr. Shorty kind of elaborated that, you know, if there are deficiencies, like the BIM and the nomination budget process makes available funding for cash match as long as that's all submitted and registered in the process. And so Head Start, as a matter of principle, and any program should not need to come back to the council to request cash matches. It sounds like at least since 2017. So that was, how would I say this? I think that, or my strong request to OMB in working with the Budget and Finance Committee is to integrate more detailed cash match instructions and maybe provide some more trainings. I don't know if you need more staff, but maybe put together a niche budget that can help with this. I just see it as a little bit of money or effort we can use now to save money down the road. For the second, or question I was asking is, do we need to appropriate any supplemental funding to Head Start at this time, or will the budget process for this year and going forward be enough to take care of their cash match needs? The 21.1 million, as I understand it, is for all of the programs that are receiving cash match, and I don't know if 6 million will end up being more than what can be handled by the account for taking care of this, assuming we don't have the waiver. The question that I asked about, is it bad to request the waiver every year, or what are the implications, as you see, that was not answered. So I really do want to get an answer to that from OMB as they understand it. Is there an issue, or will there be an issue? Do you anticipate any issues from the request, if it's made on an annual basis, for either 20 or 10% of the full award? Because I think that if we're in agreement that it's okay, then the committee would like to make that request or direct it to the program that they request the waiver every year. So, thank you.
Mr. Bial, Mr. Shorty.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, on that particular question, I'll defer to Mr. Shorty.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, as far as if then the committee should consider supplemental funding requests for Head Start for required match under the current fiscal year FY21. As I reported, for the FY21 nomination budget, 1.7 already obligated for the program, and the need is 2 million, and that's at 10% cash match as waived by the funding agency. The need is 2 million. There's 1.7 obligated already. There's 21 million in the pool account already. So for the current year, I would say supplemental funding request is not necessary. Now, for the FY22, whatever the need is for FY22 grant for Head Start, I explained, shown in the handout on number 3. The need they reported is 6.4 million. So of that need, and then the overall need that we've received is 10.2 million. And then there's 20 million available. So we would have to do some number juggling, if you will. The need is 10.2, the balance is around 20 million. So how much do we recommend for FY22 as Navajo Nation as a whole, and also how much to obligate for a Head Start? So when we get to that, then those numbers will become clear. So as far as supplemental requests for the current year, I don't think it's necessary. But I think what Head Start is trying to get at is, okay, there were proposed expenditure on the balance remain of the 6.3, 2 point whatever. There were items budgeted in there because that has been lapsed. That lapsed. Now they're unable to purchase those items. I think that's what they're trying to have the funds restored so they can make those purchases. Now, as far as issues with continuing to request waiver on annual Head Start grant, as I indicated, I think that needs to be weighed, the pros and cons. If it's a waiver, using the FY22 fiscal year as an example, Head Start is anticipating the government to provide 21 million. The nation's share of that 20% is around 6 million, which makes a total budget of 27 million. So if the nation requested a waiver in whole, let's say the 20%, then we'll only deal with work with $21 million budget as opposed to 27 million. So which is better, to operate with a $27 million budget or a $21 million budget? Obviously, the higher amount would be better, but yet the difference was going to have to come from the Navajo Nation share. So it works both ways. Working with a larger budget, certainly do more for the Head Start program, and as far as providing education to grandkids, great-grandkids out there. But the nation has to come up with a larger share in that case. If the nation obtains a waiver, then working with a smaller budget, then don't have that much to operate in serving the needs of the kids and grandkids. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Shorty. Committee members, any follow-up questions? If not, then Mr. Bial and Mr. Shorty. Initial presentation. Those that participate in the cash match pool. You basically said that cash match stays with that particular grant or contract. Then you followed up and said that historically, the programs, departments, and divisions don't use up all of their cash match or the what's in the pool for their grant. So that ends up to be, I guess, monies that are unmarked within that cash match pool. Am I correct? Is my assumption correct?
Mr. Chair, this is Cordell.
Yes.
You're on track. Your understanding is correct. So for the current year, FY21, that handout that was emailed to you, FY21 on the number 3 on that table, FY21 Navajo Nation need was 7.5, 3.5 was appropriated. So, and the pool is 20 million as we speak. So, of that 3.5, if it's not fully expended, what was appropriated, let's say 3.2 million is expended, leaving 300,000 unexpended, leave it on the table. That stays in the pool, and then more appropriation coming from FY. So now that whatever is in the pool is a larger amount. So that amount is used to for the nation for expenditure on the nation's share of the required match on the grants that are in the cash match pool. So what's not expended stays in there. New appropriation is added to there. What's in the pool then is expended to account for the nation's share of the expenditure on the federal award. So that's revolving. Whatever's in there is for, to address the nation's share of required match. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Shorty. Committee members, any follow-up? In regard to the original 6.3, the 2018 appropriation, if that particular 6.3 or the match that was required then, if it would have gone into this the pool, then that would have continued to be available and available for use by the program. Is that thinking correct?
Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. I guess that was an item that we all needed to be educated on. Regarding the waiver, when does that waiver expire? From the waiver of from 20 to 10, when does that expire? Mr. Shorty, Mr. Bial.
It's on a per grant year basis. So the FY20 grant for Head Start started March 1st, spring here, a few months ago. Currently in progress and will end February 28th next year. That 10% applies to that grant, FY21 grant. Kadeshin FY22 application should be being prepared by Head Start. So that if the nation wants to seek waiver on that, then that has to be submitted with that grant to FY20. So it's on a grant basis.
Okay, on the annual grant award.
Oh.
Okay. So the need for the 2.9 is existing right now. Am I correct?
Okay. There was another table that I prepared. Second page of the handout, under column M, right at the bottom, actually, FY 2021 grant BACA, 21 million shows 21.5 on the column M. The numbers above that 20.5, the 600 plus 1,000, the 11 plus 1,000, 15, all the way up to 1.3 million. 1.3 million on down to 609,000. That adds up to 21.5. 10% of that is 2.1 million. 10% waiver, yeah. 10%. The nation's share is 2.1 million. And on number 3 of page 1 of the handout for Head Start, 1.7, but obligated additional. So 1.7 and 2 million, there's a difference of about 300,000. So should Head Start fully expend that 21 million, then the nation has to come up with a match share at the 2+ million. If the Head Start expenditure is at 2 million, let's say, then the nation's share will be less by that proportionate share of the contribution. So FY21, and let's say 1.7 is obligated, but the need based on actual expenditure is 2 million, then that difference, the higher amount will come out of the pool, the 20 million that's available. So in that sense, Head Start's cash match need is covered. If it turns out the actual need at the end is 2 million, then that will be covered through the pool amount. Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, any questions? Though I have a follow-up question. So in this request, whether it be from UUFB, so the cash match of 2.1 is for the period February of this year and then to March of next year. We will be crossing the Navajo Nation annual appropriation of about, what is it? 6 or 7 months? Okay, I guess the other thing is the legislation that's being requested. Will the legislation basically say that the 2.1 supplemental appropriation will go into the pool, the cash match pool of the Navajo Nation, specifically for the Department of Head Start? Mr. Bial, Mr. Shorty.
Mr. Chair, this is Cordell. If the committee decides to consider the supplemental request by Head Start for cash match, and then to specifically indicate that need to be put in the cash, that will be okay. But like I said, based on the numbers that I presented, there is sufficient amount already reserved for Head Start under the current year budget, FY21, and then with the pool amount at the amount as I indicated, 20 million. So all of that considered, there's sufficient funding available to cover the cash match need on FY21 grant for Head Start.
Okay. Mr. Shorty, could you develop a memorandum that specifically answers that question? Because Department of Head Start had basically sent the funding request to the 24th Navajo Nation Council, and certain members of the council are ready to process that, and it seems to be an unnecessary step because funds are available. Mr. Shorty, Mr. Bial.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and all on the call, I'll be happy to provide a written overview, a memorandum about the overview that I presented based on this handout, and put it in a memorandum form and make that recommendation that with the amount appropriated under FY21 budget and with the cash match pool amount, it is our understanding that there's sufficient funds available to cover the cash match need on the FY21 Head Start grant. So we can do a memo on that.
Chair, this is Delegate Slater. Can I ask one question?
Go ahead, Honorable Vice Chair Slater.
Thank you, Shania. I just saw that there was a back page to this memo that included the budget expenditure reports for, it says for fiscal years 20 and 21. So it would be the row below 1240 on that index column. And then you go over to, looks like column J, total FY 2020 grant. And that was a little over $22 million. Under row Q, it says 0.91. Is that supposed to be 91%? I just want to confirm that.
Yeah, 91% of the total grant is expended.
Okay. And so that's for fiscal year 20. And so does that, for the Head Start fiscal year, does fiscal year 20 end, did it end this past February?
Yes, that's shown on the column G, 2/27/21.
Okay, sorry, thank you. And then it's 12% for the current fiscal year, correct?
So that's the amount expended so far.
Okay, thank you.
Oh.
Thank you. Ms. Kinsella, Mr. Rodis, do you have any questions regarding what was just presented? And do we all have a better understanding on the cash match pool?
Mr. Chair, this is Mel. I don't have any questions for OMB. Thank you.
Honorable Chair, this is Alex. I don't have any questions either, but I would request, if it's okay, if that memorandum that's prepared by OMB be shared with DOJ. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Benali, Angela, since you are advising the committee, Mr. Shorty and Mr. Bial, any communication to the committee, please include Ms. Benali regarding this particular item, as well include Department of Justice, Mr. Mel Rodis and Ms. Alexandra Kinsella. And of course, the Department of Head Start. Thank you. And we really appreciate the presentation. It was very educational. And basically, thank you to Vice Chair Slater to really light the way on what the process should be going forward on behalf of Head Start. Thank you. Mr. Bial, Mr. Shorty, do you have any follow-up statements before we move on to the balance of the presentation?
This is Cordell. I don't have additional comment. Shananta able to provide clarification on question on cash mat and the grants.
Mr. Chair, this is Dominic Bial. I would just say thank you to the committee as well. As you can tell, this subject matter is there's some complication to it. And as we reported earlier, even the cash match fund pool, it's not well understood. So as an example, Mr. Shorty did some research just this morning where he discovered the $21 million balance still there. So we would need to qualify that, but even that is information to me. So, well, to all of us for that matter. So it's been educational. There was recommendations made by Delegate Slater that maybe we can do some training once this is put in written form, so that everyone that's involved in this can better understand it. That's a good recommendation. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee members.
Thank you.
Derek, Leonard T here. Yes, Derek, it's good. Let Daniel sell it and anyway. All right. Thank you. All right. Yeah.
Okay. We found out some new information on somebody that didn't mute their phone. Miss Angelita Benali, who is next on the order of presentation?
That would, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, the next presenters are Dr. Elvira Bitsui, and also included Ms. Patricia Ghani.
Dr. Bitsui.
Yate, Shanantai, Nafengi. Thank you, Ado, Shiaj, Mr. Shorty, and Mr. Rial. Thank you very much for your presentation. Chair So, if I may, I'd like to defer to, or actually, I'd like to introduce Mr. Delroy Grant, who's been on the call for a few minutes here. If I could have him introduce himself, then I'll go ahead and I have a couple of questions in addition to my words of gratitude to all of you. Thank you.
Yate. Good morning, everyone. I'm Delroy Grant. I'm the program specialist with the Office of Head Start for the Navajo Nation Head Start program. It's the honor to be here to talk with you all and to support the Navajo Nation Head Start. I've been a program specialist with the Navajo Head Start for over 5 years now, and I can definitely attest to where we've been and where we are heading. So, if anyone, the Honorable Chairman Souls, having questions for me, or Honorable Vice Chairman Slater, please, and anyone else on the honorable members on the board and any honorable delegates, I'm here to provide any question that I can, and if I can't, I will get back to the board. Again, it's an honor to be here, and I always look forward to working with Navajo Nation Head Start program and with that beautiful team, wonderful team that we have. It's always a pleasure. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Delroy. Ado, Shanantai, Nothingi. I have a question for Mr. Shorty regarding the comprehensive budget that we have on our end. You mentioned that our cash match is going to be met, which is great. I really appreciate that. And so will we be getting another copy of the comprehensive budget strictly designating the cash funds are the non-federal match that's needed for Navajo Head Start? Because the one we have here says it's not identified. Ekut ado hiahan and I no thin qua a yahe ban so case do ban not in do quad a yahe hotza what I ban this case. And thank you, Delroy, for joining our call. Mr. Grant was interested in supporting our program and improving our program regarding the CAP document and the process we're going through. So I just want to extend my gratitude to all of you and Nana.
Mr. Doherty, are you still on the call?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Pitsoy. Earlier, it was mentioned that this has been educational. OMB, what should be happening that wasn't happening previously is what I explained. For the current year, 3.8 million was appropriated for cash match. 3.5. So what we should have happened, and what we'll do a belated notice, if you will, is a program that had requested cash match for FY21 budget process, and what was obligated for them. We need to inform them on that. And then on Dr. Bitsoy's request, is there any documentation that would be forthcoming to indicate that for FY21 grant, there is sufficient cash match by the nation? Just a documentation to do that. Another update or revision that needs to be made is for FY22 requests Head Start submitted their need already based on estimated funding. At the end, based on the actual award, that the request needs to be updated to show the actual award. Then we have better understanding to what the actual cash match need is. So that process needs to happen. And this goes back to what Delegate Slater had said. Moving forward, what improvement, what update needs to be made so this is better understood. So this needs to happen. What was requested, and then what's the award? All of that, we need to start doing that. And again, like I said, there's rules and procedures being developed on that, which will be available by the end of the year. Mr. Chair.
Sheila, thank you. And I think your response is very clear. Committee members, anybody else? Otherwise, I think we're at the end of our presentation regarding particular item. Is that Honorable Slater?
No, I think it's Delegate Halona. Needs to mute his phone.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Honorable Halona, please mute your phone. Sounds like you're herding sheep out there.
Sir, I am muted. That sounded like a bleed over. Sounded like Eugene Soda.
The chair is open from the committee to accept the report.
Motion, Halona, accept the report.
Okay, motion by Honorable Halona.
Second, Wanika.
Thank you, Cecilia. Second by Honorable Edison Wanika. Any follow-up? I think through the report, there's going to be a memo sent to the committee as well as DOJ and Department of Head Start. That really clarifies what will occur in the future. Any comments or additional items? If not, then Mr. Mose, roll call vote on accepting the report. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr.
Delegate Paul Begay votes green.
Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona.
Halona votes great.
Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Honorable Carl Russell Slater.
Green.
Honorable Carl Russell Slater votes green. Honorable Charlene So.
Green.
Honorable Charlene So votes green. Honorable Edison J. Wanika. Green. Honorable Edison J. Wanika votes green. Chair, a vote of 5 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you, committee members. Let the record show a vote of 5 in favor and none opposed, and the chair not voting. So we proceed. So we proceed to item, the new 5B. Ms. Benali, please apprise us of the next item.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members of the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee. You have your C. It's a follow-up report on the self-governance grant. Presenters are Doreen McPaul, Attorney General, Michelle Begay, Attorney with the NNDOJ. That's the one Roslyn So was invited to present, but she's not available. However, Marcus Yazzie from IHS is available. And also invited to attend are Dr. Jill Jim with NDOH, Jesse Delmar with NDPS, Chris Casoli with EMS under the DPS, and Deanna Nez Gishi with NDSS. Mr. Chair.
Okay. Let me deviate from the list. Let's go first with Mr. Marquis Yazzie and his associate regarding the process that we're seeking on the self-governance planning grant. Mr. Yazzie.
Yes, good afternoon. Just doing a mic check. Could you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let me share my screen real quick.
And if you could, going forward, present that presentation to Ms. Benali so that it is available on the record for the HES committee.
Sure thing.
Yes, okay, so, you may proceed.
Yes, good morning, everyone. First off, Yatish Gedo Shivananche Marquis Yazzie Inishia so initially do Kifachini Dashiche Teago Nechi Dena Shato Nanijoj De Shivan Office of Indian Self-Determination Banashnish. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marquis Yazzie. I serve as the Director for the Office of Indian Self-Determination. But on behalf of the Indian Health Service, as well as the Acting Director, IHS Director, Ms. Elizabeth Fowler, and the Navajo Area Director, Ms. Rosalind So, I'm pleased to welcome you all to provide an overview of the Tribal Self-Governance Program. And I hope that this overview provides an understanding of the opportunities available under Title V of the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act. But just to provide you a quick overview of of where we are today. Just within the Navajo area. Within the Navajo area, we do have Mr. Leonard Chi, who serves as a program analyst within my department, and then Mr. Benjamin Alford, also serving as a management analyst. And I'm currently in the process of bringing on a second management analyst. So right now that position remains vacant, but I just wanted to give you an overview of our Office of Indian Self-Determination. Again, the Indian Health Service, our mission within the Indian Health Service is to raise the physical, mental, and social and spiritual health of American Indians and Alaska Natives to the highest level. And our goal is to ensure that comprehensive, culturally acceptable, personal, and public health services are available and accessible to all American Indian and Alaska Native people. And through this, we provide a foundation to uphold the federal government's obligation to promote healthy American Indian and Alaska Native people, communities, and cultures, and to honor and protect the inherent rights of tribes. And this is just a quick structure of a organizational structure within the Indian Health Service. As you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see the Navajo area office within this structure, and then it goes all the way, identifying all of the other area offices and key office personnel throughout the Indian Health Service. And then the larger box at the top, you'll see Acting Director Elizabeth Fowler, as well as key leadership positions such as the Acting Chief Medical Officer, Michael Tote. It's actually Acting Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Loretta Christensen, and then below that, Deputy Director for Intergovernmental Affairs, Mr. Benjamin Smith. Mr. Smith oversees the right-hand urban Office of Urban Indian Health Programs, and that's directed by Rose Wiaki. And then on the left-hand side, you'll see the Office of Direct Service and Contracting Tribes, and that's where the Title I office resides, and that's directed by Miss Terry Schmidt. And that's where EMS, Health Management Service, Navajo Treatment Center, they're organized under that particular department. And today's structure will focus a little bit more on the Office of Tribal Self-Governance, and that's directed by Miss Jennifer Cooper. So that just gives you a quick overview of our organizational structure. And then transitioning to the Office of Tribal Self-Governance, we do have the top left, Miss Jennifer Cooper, as well as the Deputy Director, Miss Carla Mayo, and various program analysts. Miss Roxanne Houston, who is the top third from the Miss Houston, she oversees the Navajo area in terms of coordinating our efforts. And then Miss Wileen Yazi is a financial analyst within the Office of Tribal Self-Governance, and she processes the Title V payments. So at some point, when we do transition to the Office of Tribal Self-Governance, those individuals will be assisting with annual multi-year funding agreement negotiations, as well as payment processing for amendments, things of that sort. And then this particular slide just gives you an overview of the program analyst by area. And as you can see, Ms. Houston assists with the Navajo area in coordinating our responses. And then again, financial analyst, Ms. Wileen Yazi, works with the Navajo area. So those individuals will be assisting. So then I just wanted to, for those not familiar with the Indian Health Service or new, within the Indian Health Service, we have 12 area offices throughout the United States, and this is identified in the left-hand column, or left side. And so you can see the Navajo area is its own area. It does work with the Navajo Nation tribe, as well as the San Juan Southern Paiute tribe. So our area is a little unique and predominantly working strictly with the Navajo Nation as compared to other tribes throughout the United States. And on the right-hand side, we also have HHS regions. Within the Navajo Nation, you can see on the left side, we have it structured within covering 3 states. So usually regions 8, 9, and 6 covers the Navajo Nation. So when we have tribal consultations, that's what we typically refer to as HHS consultations or regional consultations within those specific geographical regions. And here's a map of all the facilities throughout the United States, identifying some of the locations. And throughout the number of facilities operated by Indian Health Service and tribes, throughout total collectively, we have 652 facilities, and these were based on 2015 numbers. Of those, 118 were federally operated, and 534 were tribally operated, and that totals both Title I and Title V under the tribally operated column. And then within the Navajo area, you'll typically hear the word Indian ITU, and that typically refers to the Indian Health Service Tribes and Urban program. And within the Navajo area, we have 5 federal locations: Gallup Service Unit, Crown Point Service Unit, Shiprock Service Unit, Chinle, and Kayenta Service Units. And then under Title I, we have a contract with the San Juan Southern Paiute Tribe. We have Fort Defiance Indian Hospital Board, Navajo Health Foundation, Sage Memorial Hospital, and the Navajo Nation has 3 contracted programs: EMS, Health Management Service, and the Navajo Treatment Center. And under Title V, we have 3 compacts: the Winslow Indian Healthcare Center, to the City Regional Healthcare Corporation, and the Utah Navajo Health System. So Office of Indian Self-Determination oversees the Title I contracts and works with Title V compacting conditions. And again, we have 1 urban Indian organization, Native Americans for Community Action, and they're located in Flagstaff, Arizona. So this just kind of gives you an overview of the ITU system in the Navajo area. And it's important to, before we get into the Indian self-determination as it relates to Title V, I just wanted to quickly provide a quick overview of the federal Indian policy. So again, 1776 to 1826 provides the backdrop to early federal Indian policies, and this was established through treaties with tribes, and it's also been put into the United States Constitution in Article 1, Section 8 to regulate commerce with foreign nations among the several states and with Indian tribes. And this is the focal point of some of the various Indian policies that we've gone throughout the past century, such as the Dawes Act of 1887, and then getting into the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934, the Schneider Act, the Transfer Act of 1955, the Indian Sanitation Facilities Construction Act of 1959, and where we are currently, the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act of 1975. And this has been predominantly a successful Indian policy that has remained in effect to current day. And again, just to highlight on the self-determination policy, was established in 1974 by Congress and President Nixon to give tribes in exercising their right of self-determination rights. And again, just providing them the ISDIA aspects of Public Law 93-638, as well as the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act of 1976. And let's see, there we go. And then here, this just provides an overview of the Tribal Self-Governance Program. Again, just a timeline: 1975, the passage of the ISDIA, and then in 1988, the Bureau of Indian Affairs Self-Governance Demonstration Project, followed by the 1991, the IHS Feasibility Study, and then 1992, the authorization of the IHS Self-Governance Demonstration Project, and the various technical amendments in 94, 2000, permanently established the IHS Tribal Self-Governance Program, as well as the various implementations. And when we look at the various statutes under the Indian Self-Determination Act, we look at Title 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But predominantly, Title 1 will be predominantly where tribes enter into a contract, such as Bureau of Indian Affairs or the Indian Health Service. And this is usually the starting point where a tribe gets familiar of what it takes to get familiar with overseeing or implementing the programs, functions, services, and activity. And then Title II pertains to Bureau of Indian Education. Title III was the demonstration projects for self-governance for BIA and IHS. And Title IV authorized the permanent self-governance for Bureau of Indian Affairs. And Title V was the permanent that's where the two distinction between Title I and Title V come into play when we talk about the various titles. And Title VI is more revolves around the feasibility study for any future inclusion of non-IHS agencies within HHS, such as the Administration on Aging, Administration for Children and Families, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And as we transition to Title V, the Tribal Self-Governance Program, it was codified under 25 USC Section 5381, as well as the implementing regulations at 42 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 137. And participation in the Tribal Self-Governance Program provides tribes the most flexibility to tailor their healthcare needs by choosing one of three ways to obtain health care from the federal government for their citizens. Specifically, tribes can choose from receiving health care services directly from the Indian Health Service, contract with the Indian Health Service to administer individual programs and services. The IHS would otherwise provide, and this is referred to as Title I self-determination contracting. And compacting, and number three, compacting with the IHS to assume control over health programs the IHS would otherwise prefer. And again, this is referred to as Title V self-governance compacting. And these options are not exclusive, and tribes may choose to combine options based on their individual needs and circumstances, and participate into governance program affords tribes the most flexibility to tailor healthcare services to the needs of their communities. And the Tribal Self-Government Program has and always will be and remains a tribally driven initiative, and strong federal partnership have been critical to the progress of the program's success as we see today, and tribal leaders and representatives have been involved in every stage of the development and implementation phases. And when we look at the findings, the direct declaration of the policy, it does permit an orderly transition from federal domination of programs and services to provide Indian tribes with meaningful authority, control, funding, and discretion to plan, conduct, redesign, rebudget, and administer programs, services, functions, and activities, or portions thereof, that meet the needs of the individual tribal communities. And from my understanding is that the tribal self-governance is more than an IHS program. It's an expression of the government-to-government relationship between the United States and Indian tribes. And through the program, tribes negotiate with the IHS to assume PFSAs, programs, functions, services, and activities, and again, which gives tribes the authority to manage and tailor healthcare programs in a manner that it best fits their communities, because they feel that they have an understanding of what's actually going on at the local level, as opposed to an individual who's sitting behind a desk in Washington, D.C., for example. And tribes who participating in the Tribal Self-Governance Program, again, negotiate with the IHS and take on full funding, control, and accountability for those programs or portions thereof that the tribe chooses to assume. And the primary Office of Tribal Self-Governance function, one is to serve as the primary liaison and advocate for tribes participating in the Tribal Self-Governance Program, develops, direct, and implement policies and procedures. It does provide information and technical assistance to self-governance tribes and advises the IHS director on compliance with these regulations and guidelines. And each area has an agency lead negotiator designated by the Indian Health Service Director to act on his or her behalf, who has authority to negotiate self-governance compacts as well as agreements. And we'll get into a little bit more of those aspects. But when we look at determining the eligibility into the Tribal Self-Governance Program, there are three requirements. Completing a planning phase, and each tribe is required to complete a planning phase to the satisfaction of the tribe, and then again requesting participation in the self-governance by tribal resolution, and then demonstrate 3 years of fiscal years of financial stability and financial management capability. And when we look at the planning phase, the planning phase shall be conducted to the satisfaction of the Indian tribe and shall include legal and budgetary research and internal tribal government planning and organizational preparation relating to administration of the healthcare programs. And remember that tribes participating in the negotiation with the IHS now take on the full funding and control of these PFSAs. And so this is a key element in the planning phase of where we look into a little things more specifically. And one of the questions that I'm often asked is there funding available to help planning for tribal self-governance participation? And the short answer to that is yes. And I'll provide a little bit more information later down on a different slide on some of the aspects of how tribes could look into the various funding aspects. But while planning grants may be available from IHS based on the availability of appropriations, the regulations typically do not require that a tribe receive a grant to be eligible for participation. The tribe may choose to use other resources to meet the planning requirements for this aspect. But again, I'll get into the specifics on a different slide. And then number two criteria, the Self-Governance Act makes provisions for existing self-determination tribes to participate in self-governance should they elect to do so. And typically, once the tribe has completed the planning phase to the tribe's satisfaction, the tribe may submit the necessary documents to the area lead negotiator and Office of Tribal Self-Governance to request a review and determination of eligibility to enter into the Tribal Self-Governance Program. And the tribe must request participation in the program by submitting a tribal resolution or other action by the governing body of each tribe involved. And the law also stipulates that each year about 50 tribes that meet the eligibility criteria shall be entitled to participate in the self-governance program. And again, the eligibility criteria, one being successfully completing a planning phase, and two, requesting participation in the self-governance by resolution or other official action. And alternatively, a tribe may also choose to authorize another tribe in intertribal consortium or tribal organization to plan for or carry out the programs, functions, services, and activities. And this is typical, such as the Winslow Indian Healthcare Center, Tuba City Regional Healthcare Corporation, or Utah Navajo Health System, who have been authorized by the tribe to carry out these PFSAs. And then eligibility number 3 looks more at the demonstrating 3 years of fiscal stability and financial management capability. Once Office of Tribal Self-Governance receives the tribe's resolution, OTSG will review the tribe's most recent 3 years of financial audits of the tribe's self-determination contracts with any federal agency, and to assess the demonstration of financial stability and financial management capability. And if the tribe's financial audits demonstrate no uncorrected, significant, and material audit exceptions, then the Office of Tribal Self-Governance will notify the tribe by letter that the tribe is eligible to participate in the program, and the tribe may proceed to negotiate and proceeds to negotiate a Title V compact and funding agreement. And my interpretation of no uncorrected, significant, and material audit exception is that tribes can have audit findings or be issued a corrective action plan by the agency, but if they don't resolve these findings, they would not be eligible for the tribal self-governance program. And then when we get into the another aspect that we have within the IHS is the steps looking at the financial eligibility requirements. This is another measure that our Office of Tribal Self-Governance financial analysts assist with. Once a tribal submits request to the Office of Tribal Self-Governance Director, Ms. Jennifer Cooper, requesting a formal or informal review of the audits, we could do that. The financial analyst will review 3 prior years of tribal audits from the Federal Audit Clearinghouse for any significant and material weaknesses. And the financial analyst will submit a decision memo to the director whether we're good on the financial aspects of clean audits and things of that sort. So that's another aspect that the tribe can utilize before entering or submitting its letter of intent, as well as going through the whole planning phase. Let's see. And when we talked about the negotiation process, again, one of the hallmarks of the tribal self-governance is more on the collaborative nature of the negotiation process, again, which is designed to enable a tribe to set its own priorities when assuming responsibility for these programs, functions, services, and activities. It does observe and respect the government-to-government relationship between the United States and each tribe, and importantly, involves the active participation of both the tribal and IHS representatives, and that includes the Office of Tribal Self-Governance. And through this negotiation process, there are four major stages that include planning, which we've talked about extensively up above, and then we get into the pre-negotiation, as well as negotiations and post-negotiation, and I'll explain a little bit more of those in detail. Again, when we look into the planning phase, it is critical to the negotiation process and assist tribes with making informed decisions about which programs, functions, services, and activities to assume, and what organizational changes or modifications are necessary to support those PFSAs. And during this phase, The IHS is responsible for providing descriptions of the PFSAs and associated fundings at all levels. Then that includes a program level, the area shares, as well as the headquarter shares, including any funding formulas or methodologies related to determining tribal shares, and then meeting with the tribe to provide program information and discussions, and discuss the methods currently used to manage and deliver healthcare. We also are responsible in providing, responding to the tribe requests for workload and operational data as specific to those PFSAs, sharing information related to the use of IPAs, assignments or memorandum of agreement that the tribe so wishes. And when we talk about IPAs, that's more of having federal employees coming work for the tribe. The federal employees will remain federal employees, but be assisting the tribal programs in carrying out these PFSAs, or if the tribe wants to request a memorandum of agreement for commissioned officers to assist in those, and then that's when we get into all of the buyback agreements, as well as the various agreement memorandums and entering into those as well. And we also are responsible for identifying the statutes, the regulations, as well as the policies that provide authority for administering IHS programs, and then providing technical assistance on the IHS budget, tribal shares, and other topics as needed. And a thorough planning phase improves timeliness and the efficient negotiations, and ensures that the tribe is fully prepared to assume the transfer of IHS PFSAs to the tribal health program. And the ultimate goal of the planning phase is to ensure that the tribe is aware of the responsibility involved in assuming all of the IHS PFSAs. And then when we get into the pre-negotiations, during pre-negotiations, the tribe and the federal negotiation team review and discuss issues identified during the planning phase. Pre-negotiation provides an opportunity for the tribe and the IHS to identify and discuss issues directly related to the tribe's compact and funding agreement, as well as tribal shares. So that's what the pre-negotiation phase consists of. And then when we, there we go, final negotiation. And then when we talked about all of the pre-negotiation aspects, we do get into the final negotiations. And this is a method of determining and agreeing upon the terms and provisions of a tribe's compact and funding agreement. The implementation of documents are required for the tribe to enter into the tribal self-governance program. But in advance of final negotiations, the tribe should work with IHS to secure the following: programs, titles, and descriptions, financial tables and information related to identification and justification of any type of residuals. And what I mean by residuals is that typically when a tribe goes into a compacting status, they take all of the shares so that there's no shares left over with the IHS. But depending on how the Navajo Nation wants to structure its financial tables, those are some of the aspects that we discussed during the final negotiations. And then looking at the basis for determining tribal shares, again, looking at the distribution formula, And what I've seen is that tribes may also want to discuss financial matters that show estimated fundings for the next year, and any type of increases or decreases in funding, and compared with the current year. And because most often when we get into compacts and funding agreements, the funding agreements are usually established in multi-year funding agreements. And what I mean by that is some tribal organizations have established 5-year multi-year funding agreements. And typically under the Title I, contractors go through an annual funding agreement negotiation. So usually how we're going to structure the funding for multi-year resolutions. And then when we get into the compact again sets the terms and conditions, and it sets forth based off of the government-to-government relationship between the tribe and the HHS secretary. And then when we get into the funding agreement and negotiating that, the funding agreement again describes the length of the agreement, whether it will be annual or multi-year. Identifies the PFSAs or portions thereof the tribe will assume. And this was typically under Title I identified through what is known as the scope of work. And then also looking at the specific amounts of funding associated with the tribal assumption, and includes terms required by federal statutes and other terms agreed by the parties. Both documents, compact and funding agreement, are required to participate in the tribal self-governance program, and they're usually negotiated agreements that become legally binding and mutually enforceable after both parties sign the documents. Either documents can be renegotiated at the tribe's request, and negotiations are not an allocation process. They do provide an opportunity to mutually review and discuss budget and program issues to reach agreement and finalize documents. Again, there are various entities involved with the negotiation process. For example, a tribal government would typically select a representative to negotiate these contracts or compacts, which may include President Nez or someone from the Health, Education, Human Services Committee or governing body, a tribal health director, or any type of legal counsel or any other consultants. But regardless of the composition of the tribal team, tribal representatives must have decision-making authority from the tribal governing body to successfully negotiate and agree to the provisions within these agreements. And on the federal negotiation team that is led by an agency lead negotiator, and for the Navajo area, I'm designated as the agency lead negotiator, as well as the negotiation team. And this typically includes the area and headquarters, subject matter experts, Office of Tribal Self-Governance staff, Office of Finance and Accounting within headquarters, as well as our Office of General Counsel in Region 9. And the specific duties of the agency lead negotiator is that they are the only member of the federal negotiation team with delegated authority to negotiate on behalf of the IHS director. The ALN is the designated official that provides the tribe with self-governance information, assists tribes in planning, organizes meetings between the IHS and the tribe, and coordinates the agency's response to any type of tribal questions during the negotiation process. So the ALN typically has a working understanding of all of IHS, and is aware of any current policy and practices, and an understanding of the rights and authorities available to a tribe under Title V of the ISDIA. And the question here that I typically get is there funding available to help with the negotiation process? And yes, there is funding available for the negotiation process, and I'll cover that in a later slide down the road. And typically, there may be circumstances in which the tribe and IHS do not reach mutual resolution on some issues during the negotiation process. And in those situations, the ISDIA and its regulations provide a final offer process for resolving within a specified time frame disputes that disputes that may develop in negotiation of contract and funding agreement aspects. And typically, the tribe will submit a final offer to the agency lead negotiator, or if they choose, to the IHS director. And typically, the final offer must contain a description of the disagreement between the HHS secretary and the tribe's final proposal to resolve the disagreement. And this document should be clearly identified as final offer. And there is typically a 45-day review period, which begins from the date that the IHS received the final offer. And if no action within the 45-day review period, unless a longer time period is negotiated, the final offer is accepted automatically by operation of law. And this deviates a little bit from the IHS. Under Title I, we usually have a 90-day review period to either approve or decline a contract. But under Title V, there is no declination declination to decline a compact proposal. And that the secretary may only reject a tribe's final offer for one of the following reasons. One, the amounts of funds proposed in the final offer exceed the applicable funding level to which the tribe is entitled under the Indian Self-Determination Act. Two, the programs, services, functions, and activities that is the subject of the final offer is an inherent federal function that cannot legally be delegated to a tribe. Three, the tribe cannot carry out the programs, functions, services, and activities in a manner that would not result in significant danger or risk to the public health. And number four, the tribe is not eligible to participate in tribal self-governance under Section 503 of the ISDIA. So that just gives you an overview of the final offer when we do go into negotiations. And then once we finalize the documents, the document processing and payments, the tribal organization signs the final documents and returns them to the agency lead negotiator. The ALN reviews the documents and submits the certification package to headquarters for processing and signature by the IHS director or his or her designee. And that'll typically be Ms. Jennifer Cooper or Mr. Benjamin Smith, intergovernmental deputy director, or the IHS director themselves. And once the compact and funding agreement are signed by both parties, they become legally binding and enforceable documents. And again, the whole aspect of entering into a compact, it more revolves around partnership, and it does shift from contract management to more autonomy. Tribes may redesign or consolidate PFSAs and reallocate or redirect funding with IHS approval in accordance with the ISDIA. There is no routine performance monitoring under Title V. Under Title I, we usually have annual site visits or one site visit per the term of the contract. And then the only, there's a mandatory reporting requirement is the only mandatory reporting requirement is the annual single agency audit. Under Title V, under Title I, we do request an annual report as well as a federal financial report. But overall, there is strong interest when tribes do compact in national health policy, leading to development of best practices is what I've generally seen throughout the tribes who transition from contracting to compacting. Right now, I'm going to get into the overview of the IHS self-governance cooperative agreements for planning and negotiation. So the planning cooperative agreements provide resources to tribes interested in entering into self-governance and to existing tribes interested in expanding their programs, services, functions, and activities. And who can apply? Tribes that have not received a cooperative agreement, tribes that received a cooperative agreement but choose not to enter into the tribal self-governance programs, existing self-government tribes that are planning to assume and or expand current PFSAs, and this includes tribes that have already received cooperative agreements. And some of the examples of how planning activities for these cooperative agreements are used is sometimes tribes use them to evaluate and research PFSAs at the organizational level, planning activities, meetings, hiring consultants, research, best practices, and so forth, looking at evaluating and implementing policies and practices that assist with assumption extensions, and then also, tribes have conducted educational activities that prepare leadership and staff for assuming or expanding PFSAs, and then completing planning. And then, importantly, the planning activities for these cooperative agreements is that it should be completed, the complete planning, it should be completed to the satisfaction of the tribe. And the award amounts for these planning cooperative agreements, typically there are 5 planning cooperative agreements that will be issued for a given fiscal year, subject to the availability of appropriations. And the award amounts could be up to $120,000, not to exceed. And at this time, the planning cooperative agreements have not been published, so I'm still waiting for clarification from headquarters of when those cooperative agreements will be published to the Federal Register. But typical questions that I usually get on cooperative agreements is a tribe required to apply for an IHS tribal self-governance planning cooperative agreement in order to participate in the program? No, a tribe may use its own resources to perform a tribal self-governance planning activity, as long as the planning activity is conducted to the satisfaction of the tribe. What is the award period for tribal self-governance planning cooperative agreement? Generally, the award period is 1 year. Hypothetically, after completing a planning phase, is a tribe required to negotiate with the IHS to enter into a tribal self-governance? No, a tribe may elect to delay participation or not participate at all if the tribe determines that it is not yet prepared to administer healthcare programs. And then, as mentioned previously, we do have cooperative agreements for negotiations. Negotiation cooperative agreements provide resources to the tribe to assist in defraying the cost of preparing to negotiate a compact and funding agreement in partnership with the Office of Tribal Self-Governance. And typically, again, the who can apply are the same metrics as the the planning phase. I won't really get into that. But again, typical negotiation activity examples that tribes have generally used are conduct trainings or planning meetings related to a negotiation activity, travel costs, hire consultants to assist with preparation of the compact and funding agreement, review and understand each funding table as it relates to assuming or expanding programs, services, functions, and activities, conduct research, and review tools that will assist in the process of negotiations. And then another aspect is the tribal management grants. And the purpose of the IHS tribal management grants is to enhance and develop health management infrastructure and assist tribes in assuming all or part of the existing IHS PFSAs through a Title I ISDIA contract and assist established Title I ISDIA contractors and Title V ISDIA compactors to further develop and improve management capability. And we do have they do award approximately 16 to 18 awards in a given year, some relating to feasibility study. And within this category, a feasibility study typically includes a study of a specific IHS program or segments of a program to determine if tribal management of the program is possible, and that's usually for $70,000 for 12 months, and then getting into the planning projects, and this may involve data collection to establish any type of goals or performance measures for health programs, program operations. Under these, that planning phase is $50,000 for 12 months. And then we get into the evaluation study, and this typically includes a systematic collection analysis and interpretation of data for the purpose of determining the value of the program, and that evaluation study is at $50,000 for 12 months. And then looking more at the health management structure component, and this allows for any type of implementation of a system, and looks at the overall structure of any type of health management departments, health boards, financial management systems, third-party billing if the tribe wants to look more into that, medical records, management information systems. So that's what some of the typical uses under health management structure, and the average funding for that is about $100,000 for 12 months. But I think the maximum funding is $300,000 over a 35-month period. And again, just to highlight on the application, there is typically a detailed announcement that are published through the Federal Register notice, and this announcement is available at www.grants.gov and also posted on our self-governance webpage. And these announcements contain information such as the number of agreements available, how to apply, the deadlines and criteria for scoring. And as I mentioned, I have not heard anything of the current fiscal year of when those announcements will be published for the cooperative agreements as well as the tribal management grants. But once I have those available or access information to those, I'll send those out to Dr. Jim as well as the committee to take any action. And overall, just the benefits of compacting, it does afford tribes the most flexibility to set its own healthcare priorities and tailor healthcare services to the needs of their communities when assuming IHS PFSAs. A tribe or tribal organization may redesign, consolidate those PFSAs and reallocate and rebudget funding without IHS approval in accordance with the ISDIA. Again, there's no routine monitoring that is required, and it does establish a strong federal tribal partnership, and this has been critical to the continued success of Title V and the tribal self-governance program. But importantly, it is very tribally driven, these negotiations when we sit down. So a lot to consider and ponder. And another portion that I wanted to just talk about with the committee, as well as those other departments, about pre-award and startup costs. I know that some of the programs have not expanded, or such as behavioral health or mental health. I think the Health Management Service is wanting to add those specific PFSAs into their budget categories, but there are some pre-award letters, and some of the notifications for pre-award costs must clearly indicate the nature and extent of the cost to be incurred. And that should be submitted. Today, I have not received any type of notice of pre-award costs from the Navajo Nation, and this also was addressed to the Emergency Medical Service pre-award costs. I do understand that they wanted to enter into an inter-facility transport, and whether or not there'll be any pre-award costs associated with expanding those specific PFSAs. And then there'll be a time where we have to go into negotiations and verify the costs and confirm some of those expenditures. And then also looking at some of the startup costs, negotiating estimate costs with any type of new assumptions, whether HMS plans on putting behavioral health as a new category under this transition. So those are some of the things just to keep in mind when we get into the pre-award startup costs with any type of transition from Title I to Title V. But overall, and this PowerPoint presentation just gives you an overview of the Tribal Self-Governance Program. We are in the 20th year as a permanent program as of August 18th of 2020. Throughout the 12 area offices, we do have 375 participating tribes that have entered into Title V under the Indian Self-Determination and Education Assistance Act. And we do have 105 compacts and 131 funding agreements. And the part of why those numbers are different is perhaps, particularly in Alaska and the Navajo area, there could be one compact for multiple tribes. For instance, the Navajo area has one compact, and that's with the Navajo Nation, and the 3 tribal organizations who establish one compact. But each one of those tribal organizations is a different funding agreements. So that's typical of how the Navajo Nation, or if the Navajo Nation wants to renegotiate all the compacts. But in fiscal year 2020, we did transfer $2.6 billion, and this was provided through stable base funding, as well as COVID funding of $567 million, and other non-recurring dollars that were sent to our Title V entities for $123 million. So total, through the Title V program, we have transferred $3.29 billion to our Title V self-governance program. But in closing, renewing and strengthening partnership with tribes is a top priority for the Indian Health Service, and partnership with tribes is central to our efforts to improve the health status of American Indians and Alaska Natives. And we at the IHS, respect the rights of American Indian and Alaska Native tribes to choose to assume full responsibility for providing healthcare services to their communities. But we do value our tribal self-governance program as an important part of the Indian Health health system. And again, we appreciate, or I appreciate, your participation, and I look forward to strengthening our valued nation-to-nation relationship with the Navajo Nation. And again, thank you for the opportunity to present today and for your service to our Navajo communities. And if you have any questions or comments, I can be reached at the following. And I'll turn it back over to you, Chairman. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yazzie. Thank you for the presentation. I did receive the PowerPoint slides, so I was able to follow it in part. Committee members, any questions for Mr. Yazzie?
Chair Salona?
Oh, Honorable Halona, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you, Chair, and committee members. Good afternoon. Mr. Yazzie, I just want to make a comment. I don't know if there's any literature that you can provide for us, because you gave us a great history lesson, and I caught most of it, but I'd like to review it a little bit more just for my own information to see where how IHS was really created, what kind of services that we really provide according to the Act and all the legislation passed through the years. If you have something in a written report of some sort that you can deliver, really appreciate it so that I can have more information. You know, you did a good job on it. I caught most of it. I just want to have a chance to review a little bit. Mr. Yazzie. Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Honorable Pernell Halona. Our advisor, Ms. Angelita Benali, forwarded the PowerPoint presentation. And Mr. Yazzie followed that aspect. So I don't know what other kind of information that, excuse me, Mr. Yazzie could provide. Mr. Yazzie.
Thanks for that question.
I didn't get that PowerPoint, so that's what I was requesting some other information. So I will look again in my email. Chair.
Oh, Miss Benali sent that out at 10:16 a.m. and I just got it about 20 minutes ago. Mr. Yazzie.
Hi, this is Marquise. Yeah, I could put something together and resend the PowerPoint presentation over to Delegate Halona and provide any published material from the IHS on the self-governance program. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Yazzie. Okay. So, do we have Attorney General McCall on the call? If not, who is designated to present to the committee?
Good afternoon, Mr. Brickville. This is Michelle Begay from Navajo Nation Department of Justice.
yeah, Deja, you have the conference floor.
Okay, I just have a quick update from the last time, from last week's meeting. The committee had requested that I share the draft legislation that I worked on with our outside counsel with legislative counsel. And I also updated that draft legislation to include not only NDOH, but also EMS and Navajo Treatment Center, as they're the other two contracts that we have with IHS at the moment. So I updated that draft and I did send it to Mr. Haven and Ms. Bobroff over at the Office of Legislative Counsel for their review and comments regarding any recommended changes to be made to it. I did have a discussion with Mr. Haven on this, but I have not received any feedback as of yet. If you have any other questions regarding this, please let me know.
Thank you, Ms. Begay. Does that also include the mental and behavioral health program? I know we have a 638 contract with IHS in that respect.
Yes, the current contract that NDOH is under, which is called the Health Management Systems, includes several programs under NDOH, and one of them is behavioral health.
Haguashila, thank you. Committee members, any questions for Ms. Begay as part of the presentation on the self-governance? If not, then Ms. Benali, do we have Dr. Jill Jim on the call, as well as personnel from Department of Public Safety and Division of Social Services?
Mr. Chair and members of the Health Education Human Services Committee, I see that Dr. Jill Jim is on the call, and there are several other numbers that don't have names beside them, so it's not easy to identify who is actually calling in with those numbers.
Dr. Jill Jim, you have the teleconference floor.
Yes, Chair. This is Dr. Jill Jim Shana here at the HES Committee. And also Marquise, thank you for the presentation, as well as others on the call. I do see Ms. Deanna Neswit-Gishi for DSS, and also Chris Cascoli with Navajo EMS on the call as well. So at this point, I believe Michelle and provided an update regarding those changes to a resolution. And my next task is also meeting with the acting controller regarding some of the pre-requirements of the eligibility for this. So that will probably be my only update, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mr. Yazzie, the announcement for the planning grants, what is the annual date for that?
Hi, thank you for that question, Chairman. So typically those should have been published back in mid-April, but due to COVID, I think our IHS headquarters office is delayed in posting that. So I'm not sure when, and I'm not able to provide an approximate time frame of when that announcement will be available, because that does need to go through approval or apportionment funding from the Federal Office of Management and Budget for any new fiscal year announcements. And then it also has to go through the Federal Register notice and be posted to the grants.gov website. And again, that will contain all the information on how to apply, as well as the number of planning cooperative agreements for planning that will be available. Sorry. The date application of when that'll be accepted, the deadline for those submissions, as well as the any eligibility requirements or documentation required to be submitted with those application, and also describe some of the criteria for scoring and how the awards will be determined. And as I mentioned previously, once I have that information, I'll be certain to send that over to Dr. Jim as well as the committee to look into those planning cooperative agreements. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Keskoli and Ms. Diana Neslet-Gishi, do you have any comments regarding this effort to secure the planning grant? If not, then let's go. Mr. Ron Haven, are you on the call?
Yes, sir. I'm on the call. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I'm on the call.
Okay. Regarding the legislation, have you when will you be reviewing that legislation? And if necessary, do we need a member of the HES committee to sign the sponsorship document?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and I hope Dana's on the line, but I'll just real briefly. Michelle from DOJ has provided a report, and I think there are some concerns our office has, and we likely will be redrafting the resolution. I will also talk to DOJ, Michelle, and I do understand that there is outside counsel that prepared the resolution, so may need to talk to the outside counsel. And there's reference to planning phase insofar as the statement just recently being made there. But the resolution that I have received actually goes beyond the planning phase and authorizes other matters. So I think that portion of it, I think we do need to look at. The other matter that I need to also indicate is that there's references to 2 other programs, and I do need to get the latest resolution on that, and I do apologize to Department of Justice if they forwarded that, but I do have what was forwarded to me in respect to the Division of Social Services, DPS, and also Department of Health. And we do have it, Mr. Chair, and as soon as we can provide the advice. Certainly, it would be up to a delegate to do the sponsorship. So that's all the comments I have for now, and I think Dana may have additional comments. Thank you.
Ms. Bobroff, are you on the call?
Thank you, Chair. I am on the call. I'm bouncing back and forth. To begin with, yes, we do need a sponsor request made. And as Mr. Haven stated, I have done a cursory review of the legislation. It does need some work done on it. I would say it will just that we should probably have it ready to go out by probably Monday or Tuesday. Maybe earlier. A lot of it will depend on what happens tomorrow at the Navi meeting, if we have any time tomorrow to work on it. But yeah, it should not be too long, and we do need a sponsor. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, committee members, there you have it. Any other questions from the committee? Honorable Vice Chair Slater, Honorable Edison Wanika, if you could file the sponsorship document this afternoon, it would really be helpful. And we don't have to shoot for this week or this Friday, whenever it becomes available. Appreciate that aspect. Committee members.
Chair, to verify, you're talking about the sponsorship for the resolution that's required to start this process?
Yes, to basically pursue the self-governance planning grant.
Okay. We can definitely do that. I had a question too.
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Before we proceed further, Honorable Vice Chair Slater, you have the floor.
The question is how far along are we on the draft of the resolution? And have we gotten everything from the relevant programs to the Department of Health and DOJ attorneys who are helping us?
Let's make the question go to Dr. Jill Jim, Miss Michelle Duguay. Thank you.
Shana, this is Dr. Jim. I think, Michelle, are you able to answer that question? Thanks.
Ms. Michelle, as I noted, did a draft of the resolution, which includes, I guess, several stages, not only for the preparation of the grant, but also to later seek entry into self-governance. This was discussed at previous HUS meetings, and upon the recommendation of the people who were present, that's why it includes all those steps in there, so that after the preparations have been done, then once they're ready, that they wouldn't need to come back to the council or committees for further resolutions. But if Legislative Council has a different idea about that, we can discuss that. I don't believe that any of the programs have provided any documentation at this time. At this time, it's just based on what was discussed previously. So there are no, I don't believe there are any attachments for the draft legislation.
No exhibits. Dr. Jim, would we need to, and again, Mr. Marquis Yazzie, what, in requesting this planning grant, what is necessarily required to basically fit in the,
can you call me that later then? I'll give you a
to
call.
qualify for that planning grant? I know it's still hasn't been announced, and I guess what we're trying to do is have a document ready to file as soon as that announcement comes through.
Thank you for that. You know, this is the first time that I've, our Office of Tribal Self-Governance administers the cooperative agreement actively, and it makes every effort to announce the availability of funds. And I'm not sure if the criteria changes from one year to the next. I'll have to circle back with you, Delegate or Chairman So, on possibly we could see what the metrics have been in prior years, perhaps in 2018 and 2019, to see if they are mirrored, and if that's typically the case of what some of those criteria, eligibility criteria for these grants entail. So I'll have to circle back with you, but that's probably one aspect that we could look at, is looking at prior year eligibility requirements to see if they're consistently been the same for each year. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Yazzie. Based on that response, committee members, let's hold off until perhaps the next meeting, June 16th. Once we have an answer, that way we know exactly what would need to go into that legislation. And hopefully the work between Department of Justice and Legislative Council will have occurred by then too. And as Ms. Bobroff noted, that it could occur rapidly if these other details are covered. Thank you. With that, committee, the chair is open for a motion to accept the report.
A motion, Doug Slater.
Second, Alona.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Slater and Honorable Alona. Committee members, any further discussion? If not, then Mr. Mose, roll call vote, please.
Yes, sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr.
Delegate Paul Begay votes green.
Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona.
Alona votes green.
Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Honorable Carl Russell Slater.
Green.
Honorable Carl Russell Slater votes green. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Edison J. Wanika. Green. Accepting the report. Honorable Edison J. Wanika votes green. Honorable Charlene So. Chair, vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you, Mr. Mose. Let the record show 4 in favor, 0 opposed, the chair not voting, 1 committee not voting. So that takes us to item 6. Ms. Benali.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item 6 is old business. There's no old business. And number 7 is new business. And there's one is number 7A. It's travel for the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee work session on Friday, June 11th, 2021 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the work session is going to be facilitated by the Natani Development Corporation. And it's going to be in coordination with their invitation to the Resources and Development Committee as well. Mr. Chair. Chair So.
Yes, Ms. Benali.
Yes,
we have it listed as old or new business A and listed as a motion, a second, a vote. Ms. Benali. We previously had approved the off-reservation travel request as well as voted to participate in that work session.
Okay, this the Health, Education, and Human Services Committee did take action on this. It must have been prior to May 26th, before I advised the first meeting of Health, Education, Human Services Committee. If so, then I'll get the records from Mr. Mose. And the travel memo request to the Speaker's office has already been submitted. Thank you.
Okay, and committee members, that request has been approved. So as this item, let's make sure our bases are covered. Committee members on this new business A, the travel, could I have a motion and a second?
Motion, Delegate Paul Begay.
Second.
Second, Alona?
Thank you, Honorable Begay, for the motion. Second by Honorable Vice Chair Slater. Sorry, Halona, you're just a tad slow. Okay. So slow you got onto the committee meeting late. Just kidding. We're appreciate your participation. Let's go to a vote, Mr. Mose.
Yes, sir. Honorable Paul Begay Jr.
Delegate Paul Begay votes 3.
Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona.
Alona votes green.
Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Honorable Carl Russell Slater. Green. Honorable Carl Russell Slater votes green. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Edison J. Wanika. Green. Honorable Edison J. Wanika votes green. Honorable Charlene So. Chair, I vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. A vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed. Chair not voting. 1 committee member not voting. That takes us to item 6, close of meeting, announcements, and adjournment. Committee members, any announcements?
No announcements.
Okay. Honorable Slater.
Oh, I was just saying none, Chair, sorry.
Okay, all right. Ms. Benali, regarding before the work session agenda is published, for that joint work session. I know it's a presentation that's being hosted by Navajo Development, but I would like to also include a presentation by the National Director of Starlink. The individual's name is Bianca Reinhardt. So if we could coordinate the agenda with Legislative Advisor Ms. Shami Begay, I'd sure appreciate it. And they could be listed for a 20-minute presentation. The reason I want to, committee members, the reason I would want to include Starlink on the agenda, the Cuba Independent School District voted to basically pay for Starlink services to students that got the hotspots during the pandemic. And the board basically said, let's subscribe to the Starlink, and starting in July, that technology, the high-speed internet access will be available to the students, the Navajo students, and maybe some Hispanic or Anglo students within the Cuba Independent School Districts that were originally issued hotspots. And the speeds that will be available is quite fast, and Ms. Reinhardt will be able to divulge all that information. So, Ms. Benali, if we could facilitate that.
Okay, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Committee members, so we have a Navi regular scheduled work session. I mean, a regular committee meeting. And there are more than 10 legislations listed on the proposed agenda. So we have our work cut out for us. And then the expectation is we're also to travel that afternoon or evening to be available June 11th for the work session. The next regular meeting will be June 16th, and I just accepted a request by text from Area Director Rosalind to present some data related to the increased use of alcohol post-pandemic, as well as the additional information on that requirements on the self-governance that Mr. Marquis Yazzie said that he will have available to us. And committee members, if there are additional items that you would want on the agenda, please let us know. And I remember now that we do have a request from Auditor General Designee Ms. Helen Brown to be available to talk to the audit findings, and we have a copy of the responses from Department of Head Start, and at that time, we hope that Ms. Brown will have adequate time to make a proper response to those audit findings and the responses by Department of Head Start. So we have approximately 3 items for the next. The other is just before noon, we do have legislation that is ready for committee action, naming 3 individuals to the Navajo Nation Human Research Review Board. That particular legislation is ready. Ms. Benali, has there been any other notices of other legislations that have been ready, that will be ready?
Possibly there's one other resolution, I believe, and but it just entered its 5-day comment period. And so if it is successful, then it'll be on the next, we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Thank you. Ahotela committee members, that's the announcement. Chair is open to a motion.
Motion to adjourn. That was a Paul Begay.
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you, Honorable Paul Begay, Honorable Edison Wanika. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. No debate on it. Mr. Mose.
Yes, sir.
Roll call vote.
Honorable Paul Begay Jr.
That was the Paul Begay votes green.
Honorable Paul Begay Jr. votes green. Honorable Pernell Halona.
Green.
Honorable Pernell Halona.
Halona votes green.
Honorable Pernell Halona votes green. Honorable Carl Russell Slater votes green via text. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Charlene So. Honorable Edison J. Wanika. Green. Honorable Edison J. Wanika votes green. Honorable Charlene So. Chair, a vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed, adjourned at 2:00 p.m.
Okay, thank you. And I guess I want to publicly apologize to Miss Angelita Benali for being a little short regarding the Head Start. But what was left on the agenda, it was some good discussion, and we have a better understanding on the matching fund pool. So, Ms. Benali, thank you for all the work you've done. The committee appreciates it. With that, committee members, we are adjourned. And committee members, take care of yourselves, and we'll listen to each other again tomorrow morning during the NABI regular meeting. Hagooneh.